Today we are revealing 4 rare coins that collectors are paying huge money for. And the craziest part is, you might already own one. This is Expensive Coins History Channel. Now think about that for a second. Not locked away in a museum. Not buried treasure from a shipwreck. Just ordinary coins. The kind that may have passed through your hands, sat forgotten in a drawer, or been tossed into an old jar years ago. And today, we're starting with one of the most overlooked pieces, a coin that many people have seen, but very few have truly understood. Picture the year 1960. The world was changing fast. Technology was growing, cultures were shifting, and everyday items, even coins, were being produced in massive numbers. Most people assumed these coins would never be worth more than their face value. But here's where things get interesting. Among those millions of coins, a small number stood apart. Subtle differences, tiny details, variations that only the sharpest eyes could detect. And over time, those differences turned ordinary coins into extraordinary collectibles. The 1962 shillings coin featuring Queen Elizabeth is one of those pieces. At first glance, it looks simple, solid, traditional, a coin that feels like history in your hand. But collectors don't just see a coin. They see a story. They look at the portrait, the texture, the edges, the way the metal has aged over time. And most importantly, they look for the details that separate a common coin from a rare one. Because not all 1962 shillings coins are equal. Some were struck with slight variations in design. Others may have been minted under different conditions. A few might even carry errors, the kind of imperfections that collectors chase relentlessly. And here's the truth that most people don't realize. Condition is everything. A coin that has been scratched, worn down, or heavily circulated might only hold modest value. But a coin that has been preserved, one that still holds its original shine, its crisp details, its untouched surface, that's where the real money begins. Collectors call this uncirculated or mint condition. And when a coin like the 1962 shillings appears in that kind of condition, it doesn't just attract attention, it creates competition. Buyers start watching. Bidding begins. Prices climb. Because serious collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying rarity, history, and the thrill of owning something few others can claim. Now imagine this scenario. Someone inherits a small box of old coins. Nothing fancy, just a mix collected over decades. It sits untouched for years. Then one day, out of curiosity, they take a closer look. They notice a familiar face, Queen Elizabeth. They check the date, 1960 AT. That moment, it's just a coin. But after a bit of research, everything changes. What they thought was spare change turns out to be something far more valuable. This happens more often than you think, because most people never look closely enough. They don't check the fine details. They don't compare variations. They don't realize that even the smallest difference can mean everything in the world of coin collecting. And that's exactly why opportunities like this still exist. Now let's talk about what makes collectors truly excited about this coin. First, the era. Coins from the mid-20th century represent a fascinating period, a bridge between old-world craftsmanship and modern mass production. That combination alone makes them appealing. Second, the design. There's a level of elegance in these coins that's hard to find today. The portrait, the engraving, the balance of the artwork, it all reflects a time when even everyday currency carried a sense of identity. And third, rarity within familiarity. This is the key. The coin isn't rare because nobody has seen it. It's rare because the right version, in the right condition, is incredibly hard to find. That's what drives value. Not just age, not just appearance, but scarcity combined with demand. And when those two forces meet, prices can reach levels that surprise almost everyone outside the collector world. Now here's something important. Many people make the mistake of cleaning their old coins. They think they're improving them, making them look newer, more attractive. But in reality, they're doing the opposite. Cleaning a coin can destroy its value instantly. Collectors want originality. They want authenticity. They want a coin that hasn't been altered, polished, or tampered with. Even a small attempt to clean it can remove microscopic layers of metal. And with that, its desirability drops. So if you ever come across a coin like this, the best thing you can do is nothing. Leave it exactly as it is. Store it safely. Handle it carefully. And most importantly, understand what you might be holding. Because the difference between an ordinary coin and a valuable one often comes down to knowledge. And right now, You're gaining that knowledge. Now think about your own situation today. Oh, you have old coins stored somewhere. A drawer, a box, a jar tucked away in a corner. Maybe something passed down from a parent or grandparent. Most people do, but very few ever take the time to truly examine them. And that's where hidden value lives, not in obvious places, but in the overlooked, the ignored, the forgotten. That's exactly what makes coins like the 1962 shillings so fascinating. They hide in plain sight. They move through generations unnoticed. Until one day, someone decides to take a closer look, and everything changes. Before we move on to the next coin, here's the number that's going to stay in your mind. Because when the right version of this coin appears, in the right condition, in front of the right collector, the value can reach up to $197,000. Yes, you heard that right. A single coin, something that once had everyday use, now capable of commanding a life-changing price. And this is just the beginning. Because the next coin we're about to reveal might surprise you even more. Now let's move to the next coin. And this one comes from a completely different part of the world, yet the story is just as powerful, maybe even more surprising. Picture Australia in 1967, a country growing, evolving, building its identity on the global stage. And like every nation, its coins were part of everyday life. People carried them in their pockets, used them without a second thought, and never imagined that one day, a simple piece of change could become something extraordinary. The 1967 Australian 20-cent coin is one of those pieces at first glance. It feels familiar, solid, practical, nothing flashy. Just another coin that people used for daily transactions, buying groceries, paying for small items, passing from hand to hand without any real attention. But here's where things take a turn. Because hidden within these ordinary coins are rare variations, subtle differences that most people would never notice. And those differences are exactly what collectors are searching for. But it's not about how many were made, that it's about how many survived, and more importantly, how many survived in exceptional condition. Think about how coins are treated. They get dropped, scratched, worn down over time, passed through countless hands, exposed to dirt, moisture, and damage. So even if millions were produced, only a tiny fraction remain in near-perfect shape, and that's where rarity begins. Now imagine a collector, someone who has spent years studying coins, learning every detail, every variation, every hidden feature that separates common pieces from valuable ones. When they come across a 1967 Australian 20-cent coin, they don't just see currency, they inspect it. They examine the edges, the surface, the sharpness of the design. They look for specific characteristics that indicate something unusual, something rare, because sometimes a coin may have been struck slightly differently, that a minor variation in the minting process, that a small detail that wasn't meant to stand out, but now makes all the difference. And when a collector finds one of these rare versions, the reaction isn't casual, it's immediate. Interest rises. Competition begins. And suddenly, that simple coin becomes the center of attention. Now here's something most people never consider. Location matters. Coins from different regions, even if they look identical at first, can have unique characteristics based on where and how they were produced. These differences can be incredibly subtle, almost invisible to an untrained eye. But to a collector, they're everything. That's why knowledge plays such a huge role in this world. Point two people can hold the same coin. Point one sees pocket change. The other sees opportunity. Now let's take a moment to imagine something real, that a man in his 50s is cleaning out an old cabinet. Inside, he finds a small tin filled with coins he hasn't touched in decades. Most of them seem ordinary, but one catches his attention. That it looks different somehow. He checks the date, 1967. Still, he's not sure if it means anything. So he sets it aside. Days later, curiosity gets the better of him. He takes a closer look, compares it with images, reads about variations, and suddenly, he realizes something important. What he has is not just another coin, that it's something collectors are actively searching for. And just like that, something forgotten becomes something valuable. This isn't a rare story. It happens more often than you might think, because most people don't know what to look for. They don't realize that even small details, things like alignment, texture, or slight differences in design, can completely change a coin's value. And that's exactly why coins like the 1967 Australian 20 cents continue to surprise people. They're hiding in plain sight. Now let's talk about condition again, Because this is where things get serious. That a heavily worn coin might still be interesting, but it won't command top value. But a coin that has been preserved, one that still shows its original detail, its sharp edges, its untouched surface, that's what collectors compete for. And when demand rises, so does the price. Because in the end, collectors aren't just buying coins, they're buying scarcity, they're buying history, they're buying the feeling of owning something that very few others can. Now here's something that might change the way you think about coins forever. Most valuable coins are not discovered by experts, they're found by ordinary people. People who simply took the time to look closer. That's IT.no special equipment, NO advanced training. Just attention to detail and a bit of curiosity.so. The question becomes, what might you be overlooking? What's sitting in your home right now that you've never really examined? Because coins like this don't announce themselves. They don't shine brighter. They don't come with labels. They wait quietly until someone notices. And when that moment happens, everything changes. Now let's bring this into focus. Because when the right version of the 1967 Australian 20-cent coin appears, in exceptional condition, with the characteristics collectors are searching for, the value can climb to an incredible $147,000. Let that sink in. A coin that once moved through everyday life, now capable of reaching a price that most people would never expect. And we're only halfway through, because the next coin on this list carries its own story, one that proves just how unpredictable and fascinating the world of coin collecting can be. Now we move forward, and this next coin might be one of the most underestimated pieces you'll ever come across. Because unlike the others, this one looks even more ordinary, smaller, simpler, easier to ignore, and that's exactly why so many people miss it. The year is 1966, at a time when coins were still a basic part of everyday life. People didn't collect them the way many do today. They used them, spent them, and rarely thought twice about what they were holding. The 1966 UK halfpenny is a perfect example of that mindset. It was never meant to be special. It was created for daily use. Small purchases, quick transactions, the kind of coin that would pass through countless hands without leaving any impression at all. But here's the reality that most people don't realize. Some of the most valuable coins in the world are the ones that were ignored the most. Because when something is overlooked, it doesn't get preserved. It doesn't get protected. It gets used, worn down, and eventually lost. Which means the number of surviving high-quality examples becomes extremely small, and that's where value begins to grow. Now imagine holding a 1966 halfpenny in your hand. It doesn't feel like much. It's light. It's simple. It doesn't demand attention. But a trained collector sees something completely different. They look beyond the size, beyond the simplicity. They focus on the details, the surface condition, the clarity of the design, the sharpness of the edges, the original finish, if it still exists. Because finding one of these coins in near-perfect condition is incredibly difficult. Most of them were used heavily, scratched, faded, worn down over time. So when a clean, well-preserved example appears, it stands out immediately, and collectors notice. Now here's something that makes this coin even more interesting. Small coins are often neglected in collections. People tend to focus on larger, more impressive-looking pieces. Coins that feel heavier, look more detailed, or seem more important at first glance. But in the world of collecting, size doesn't determine value. Rarity does, condition does, demand does. And sometimes, the smallest coins carry the biggest surprises. Let's think about a real situation. A retired man, going through old belongings, finds a small envelope tucked inside a book. Inside are a few coins. Nothing that seems remarkable. Most people would glance at them and move on. But he pauses. He notices one coin in particular. It looks older than the rest. He checks the date. 1966. At that moment, it's still just a coin. But something tells him to keep looking. He compares it with others. He examines the details. And slowly, he begins to realize that what he has might not be as ordinary as it seemed. This is how discoveries happen. Not through luck alone, but through attention, through curiosity, through the willingness to look just a little closer than everyone else. And that's what separates those who find value from those who overlook it. Now let's talk about preservation again. Because with a coin like this, it's absolutely critical. Many people store coins loosely in jars, boxes, drawers, places where they rub against each other, picking up scratches and damage over time. That kind of storage destroys value. Collectors want coins that have been protected, coins that haven't been exposed to unnecessary wear, coins that still carry their original detail. And when a 1966 half-penny appears in that kind of condition, it becomes something rare, something desirable, something worth competing for. Now here's a key point that many people miss. Age alone does not create value. There are coins much older than this that are worth very little. Why? Because they're common, because they've survived in large numbers, because demand isn't strong. But when you combine age with scarcity, with condition, with collector demand, that's when prices begin to rise. And sometimes, they rise far beyond expectations. Now think about your own collection, or even coins you've seen in the past. How many small coins did you ignore? How many did you assume had no value? How many times did you overlook something simply because it didn't stand out? Because this is where hidden opportunities live, not in the obvious, but in the unnoticed. Coins like the 1966 UK half-penny don't attract attention at first glance. They don't seem important. But that's exactly what makes them powerful in the collector's world. Because when something is underestimated, it has the potential to surprise. And this coin has done exactly that. Now let's bring it all together. When the right version of this coin appears, with strong detail, minimal wear, and the characteristics collectors are searching for, its value can reach up to $151,000. Yes. Even a small, simple half-penny, now carrying a price that can completely change someone's expectations. And here's the thing, we're not done yet, because the final coin in this list might be the one that feels the most familiar. And that's what makes it so dangerous to overlook. Now we come to the final coin. And this one might be the most surprising of all, because unlike the others, this isn't from the distant past. It doesn't feel ancient. It doesn't look rare at first glance. In fact, it feels modern, familiar, almost too common to be valuable. And that's exactly why so many people overlook it. The year is 1990. Not that long ago. Many people watching this will remember that time clearly. Coins from this era don't feel like history. They feel like everyday life. Something recent. Something ordinary. The 1990 Queen Elizabeth 20-pence coin fits perfectly into that category. It's the kind of coin people barely noticed. It moves quickly from hand to hand. It sits in wallets, pockets, jars. It's spent without a second thought. And because of that, almost no one stops to examine it. But here's where everything changes. Because even modern coins can carry rare variations. And when those variations exist in a coin that millions of people have handled, the chances of one slipping through unnoticed are surprisingly high. Now imagine this. Someone empties their pocket at the end of the day. Loose coins hit the table. Among them, a 20-pence coin. Nothing unusual, or so it seems. But if that person takes just a moment, just a few extra seconds to really look at it, they might notice something slightly different, something subtle, something that doesn't match what they've seen before. And that moment, that small decision to pay attention, can be the difference between spending a coin and discovering something valuable. Because collectors are always searching, that they're not just looking at old coins, that they're looking at all coins, especially ones that most people ignore. Now let's talk about why. Modern coins like this can become valuable. First, circulation. When a coin is used heavily, it loses its original condition quickly. Even newer coins can become worn, scratched, and damaged in a short period of time. So finding one in near-perfect condition becomes harder than people expect. Second, variations. Even in modern minting, small differences can occur. These differences might not be obvious, but they matter. A slight change in design, a minting inconsistency, or a rare production detail can turn an ordinary coin into something collectors want. Third, awareness. Most people don't believe modern coins can be valuable. And because of that belief, they never check. They never look closely. They never realize what might be right in front of them. And that's exactly why opportunities still exist. Now picture a scenario. A man in his 40s is sorting through spare change. He's not a collector. He's not an expert. He's just organizing coins. But something catches his attention. One coin looks slightly different. He pauses, takes a closer look, checks the date. 1990. Still, he's unsure. But instead of ignoring it, he decides to investigate. And that simple choice changes everything. Because what he thought was just another coin turns out to be something far more interesting. Something collectors recognize. Something they're willing to pay for. This is how discoveries happen, not through luck alone, but through awareness, through curiosity, through the willingness to question what others ignore. Now here's something important to understand. Modern coins haven't had as much time to be lost or destroyed compared to older ones. That is, when a rare version exists, it often hides in plain sight for years, sometimes decades, before being recognized. That means there are still coins out there, still waiting, still unnoticed, still being passed around without anyone realizing their true potential, and one of them could be closer than you think. Now let's talk about condition one last time. Because even with modern coins, condition plays a huge role. That a coin that has been handled carefully, stored properly, protected from damage, can stand out dramatically compared to others. Collectors notice that immediately. They're not just buying a coin, they're buying the best version of that coin they can find. And when supply is limited and demand is strong, prices rise. Now take a moment and think about everything we've covered. Point four different coins, point four different years, point four completely different stories. Yet they all share one powerful truth. Value is often hidden in plain sight. Not in what looks rare, but in what is rarely noticed. That's the difference. That's where opportunity lives. Now here's the number you've been waiting for. Because when the right version of the 1990 Queen Elizabeth 20-pence coin appears, with the right characteristics, in the right condition, its value can reach up to $118,000. Yes, even a coin that feels modern. Even a coin that many people would never think twice about. Now imagine this. What if one of these coins is already in your possession? What if it's sitting in a drawer, a jar, a forgotten box? What if you've seen it before, but never really looked at it? Because now you know something most people don't. Now you understand what to look for. Now you see coins differently. And that changes everything. So before you move on, before you forget, take a moment. Check your coins. Look closer, because sometimes the smallest discovery can lead to the biggest surprise.